Hello and welcome to another edition of Budget in Focus. I am Anara Khan, and with me in studio today is the Honorable Minister of Education, Priya Manickchand, who will be sharing her views on Budget 2025, which was presented in the National Assembly by Senior Minister within the Office of the President with responsibility for Finance and Public Service, Dr. Ashley Singh. Dr. Ashley Singh presented a whopping $1.38 trillion budget on Friday with more than $90 billion in relief measures for the people. Minister Manikchand, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
Let's start with what are your views on this budget? It's the largest budget we've ever presented in the country. It's about more than 20%, I believe, more than the last budget. And it's a people's budget. What are your thoughts?
The budget is crafted, um, before we get into those numbers that you use and so on, the budget is crafted based on our manifesto and our various uh, sector strategies that we created based on a manifesto. And let's go back to that a little bit. When we were going to people in 2020, 2019, 2020, and saying, we would like you to give us your confidence and your support to get into government because we believe we're best to serve you, and the other people, the APNU, AFC, have done such a poor job at serving you, and people were struggling and punishing. We went to people and we said, we want your support, but we want to know also what it is you want from us when we get in there. And we bottom house to bottom house, large meeting to large meeting. We had consultations with sectors that represented young people, Amerindians, women, farmers, professionals, the private sector, businessmen and women, um, sporting enthusiasts, cult music people. So we had a wide range. I remember this one big consultation that broke out into meetings that lasted all day at the Princess Restaurant Hotel in one of their large ballroom areas, and it was based on that we crafted what we would do for Guyana, that we would make sure there was good health care with hospitals and trained doctors and personnel, that we would make sure that every child across the country could access nursery, primary, secondary school, that we would make sure crime came down, that young people had opportunities to study as they worked, um, that across the country we would make sure communities had grounds where the people and children of those and young people of those communities can play, that we would never neglect our farmers, that we would make sure that the cane harvesters and cane workers who were laid off and treated really poorly could have an income and live in dignity, that we would look after our public servants and our teachers. So we crafted a manifesto, page by page, sector by sector, based on what people said they wanted. And from 2020 to now, from the very first budget that we announced, that Dr. Singh, Ashley Singh, along with the president and Bart Jagdev, our general secretary, and the rest of the cabinet crafted, was a budget to bring us to a place where we could fulfill all of those promises. So for me, the budget is another step in doing that, an exciting step in doing that. So let's take one thing that we promised. We promised that we would restore the Because We Care cash grant. Let us back up a little bit. The APNU, AFC, and every member thereof had snatched that from children. They took it away from the little children. And they said that they would replace it instead with breakfast and boots and boats and buses. APNU started office and left office, and not a single child in Region 2, not a single child on the east bank of Demerara, not a single child in Region 10, not a single child in any of the 1, 7, 8, and 9 benefited from a breakfast program that was not already started under the PPP before we left. Three schools in Berbice benefited from that program, some in Region 3 and a bunch of them in Region 4. So they took away the Because We Care cash grant, never replaced it with the things they promised to replace it with. We came back in, we immediately restored the grant. It began, I believe, in 2021 at 19,000, and then it was raised and raised and raised. And we said in our manifesto that we would restore and increase that cash grant till it reached at least $50,000. This year, each child, not each home, each child in nursery, primary, secondary is going to receive $55,000, whether they're in a private school or a public school. I say that, Anara, to say we made that promise. We heard what people said they wanted. We put it down in our manifesto. And from 2020 to now, we have been working to make sure we do what we promised, restore and increase. And that can be seen in every sector across the country.
Okay, let's zoom in on the education sector because you are the minister responsible. And let's go back to the manifesto promise. I know that the Because We Care cash grant and the breakfast program aren't the only two measures that would have been accomplished within those 5 years. Can we speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's not. Um, we promised that we would increase access, improve quality, provide for lifelong learning, and make sure children were ready for the job market by doing a number of things, including building schools, building, expanding, rehabilitating schools, providing training teachers in a better way, having online opportunities for children, and we'll go through each of those just now, and young people, by supporting parents through providing textbooks and breakfast and the cash grant, by increasing and improving TVET opportunities, technical vocational education opportunities, by making sure our facilities were in order, and a whole host of other things aimed at achieving expanded access, better quality, lifelong learning, and a preparation of our children and young people for the job market that Guyana currently needs. So what have we been doing? We've been building schools, we have been training teachers, so let's talk about the building of schools. We are building currently 37 secondary schools all across Guyana, from regions 1 to region 10, where secondary schools are needed. The APNUAFC spent 5 years in office and did not start or finish a single secondary school in this country anywhere. Let's take East Ramveld. I just had to pass there to come here, and I noticed the lights were on. So we have to change that, some of those habits and cultures too. We shouldn't have lights on during the day anyway. When we came into government, the children who were awarded a place at East Ramveld had to sit in army tents and that was a problem. Army tents are meant to keep whatever's inside in and keep things from coming from outside inside. So it was hot, it was not conducive. But why did we have to put kids in tents? We had to put kids in tents because there was no space for them. Because nothing had been done to the East Ramveld Secondary School to make space for the children of the South Georgetown, of the East Ramveld community. If you pass there now, you'll see 3 brand new blocks that are taking off first and second form, labs, and other facilities. Very shortly, you will see courts, basketball, volleyball, badminton, other facilities in the school. And what has that done? That has allowed the children there to sit in a place that is comfortable, allow the children there to be able to learn. So we've expanded the facility. We're bringing better quality. What have we done regarding trained teachers? When we came into office, the highest number of trained teachers that ever graduated in any given year was of 535. When we came into office, the CPC was closed because every learning institution was closed, and we'll come to that too in a minute. Because of COVID, we immediately went online because I knew there would be a time when COVID didn't exist and we could sit like this and we didn't have masks and we didn't have to distance. And then when that time came and we had had 5 years of teachers retiring, teachers dying, the usual kind of thing that happens in the sector, where would we replace these teachers? And I immediately instructed that CPCs to go fully online, although not wholly online. So we have now a hybrid where we have in-person teaching, but we also have online education. As a result of which, we have been able to graduate per year 2,000 plus teachers. So over the last 4 years, we've graduated more than 4,000 teachers, which means we have more teachers in the system and we have a better quality of teachers in the system. On the coastland, many of our schools are overstaffed. If you're looking at teacher-student ratio that we were looking at, which allows us now to do more. It allows us to pay specific attention to children with special needs. It allows us, with that extra teacher, extra teachers, to pay specific attention to children who need more attention to become literate. It allows us to allow for more supervision in the school compounds, in the classroom. So it's not only access, it's quality. Now, people are also forgetting that when we came into office, schools were closed. Schools were closed across the country. We had, for the first time in the history of Guyana, we had to figure out a way of engaging our children without them being in the physical presence of a teacher. And that was a mammoth undertaking. We immediately went to the Learning Channel, which existed since 2011. We went to the Learning Channel. We started teaching on the Learning Channel. We immediately started making arrangements to go on radio nationally. We prepared worksheets and posted them online and distributed them to children. We had community services in Blackboard set up in some communities. And I want to make the distinction that when we came into office, the country had been in lockdown for 5 months. From March to August, the country had been in lockdown for 5 months. From March to August, the Learning Channel existed in March, but it was not used to teach children. The radio station, although not as expanded as we have it now, existed, but it was not used to teach children. The website, which I had started in my previous iteration in the ministry, existed, but nothing was posted there. The same officers who did for me worksheets so that we could share out existed, but none of them were used to do that. So the APNUAFC just shut the schools and left parents and children up to their own devices, while other Caribbean countries were finding ways to engage their children. When we came in, that was the biggest challenge. Getting sinks into schools, getting hand washing material, distancing signs, safety signs, trying to get the schools open. Guyana was one of the first countries to reopen face to face in a way that allowed children to go back into school in a measured way. So we first had our exams classes go back into school in, I believe it was February. No, sorry, November. And then we started going back in gradually. It took 2 years to get us back into classrooms fully. So those are all challenges we had, we overcame, and that we are learning from. Those are also challenges that brought about opportunities that we didn't let slip by. The opportunity to expand our distance education, the opportunity to grow how we were going to engage not only students but teachers for training and retraining. From that has grown, one of our promises was that we would create an online university, and that we would allow students to study there. From then to now, we've established again online academy of learning. We're just under 30,000 people, mostly young people, although there's no age
I'm one of the
limit.
beneficiaries.
You're one of the
Yes.
beneficiaries.
Yes.
So my entire office, all of the secretariat, all of you are young people that are either getting degrees or masters or PhDs, and it's really beautiful to watch. And what's happening is 30,000 people like you across this country, from regions 1 to 10 and Georgetown, are studying in foreign universities for certificates and diplomas, degrees, masters, PhDs at no cost to themselves. The government is paying that. We saw a large graduates and graduates last year, on that scholarship program. And so people are able to work and study at the same time and get their qualifications. And it's making a big difference because people now have options about where they work and how much they earn, and what their marketability is. And just, purely how much more you know, how much you've challenged yourself individually. Um, so there have been some massive successes in the education sector. We have achieved for everything we've promised, every single thing we set out to do. Our breakfast program has expanded to now grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, whereas it existed at 0 places in many areas across the coast. We are giving every child from nursery to grade 2 some form of nutrition every day, whether it be fortified biscuits fortified with minerals and nutrients, or fruit juice, or a meal in the hinterland prepared in the communities in a beautiful um, village economy type arrangement that has been recognized by worldwide international financial institutions as a great model. Our secondary students, well, our grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 are getting breakfast. Our secondary children who are in dorm schools, whether they're resident in the dorm or not, for the first time from September, began to get lunch in those schools, because what was happening before is the dorm kids would get lunch, the children who live in the dorms, but the children who were non-resident in dorms wouldn't get lunch. So we've changed that. Everybody's getting lunch. Um, every child is getting the CXE recommended textbooks. So CXE has a list of recommended texts they use. We also gathered together teachers who are experts in the various subjects and determined from them what are the best books for our children. And that's how we buy textbooks. I saw a post or something the other day suggesting that we were just choosing how we were publishers, or that's not how it happens. CXE has a list of recommended texts, and then our teachers, based on their experience over the years, and that experience leading to excellent results not only in Guyana but across the Caribbean, came together to suggest, it's a textbook committee, to the ministry, these are the textbooks we want, and that's what we bought. Not for the Queen's College and Bishop student, but for every student. So if you're in Northwest, if you are in Anai, if you are at Springlands or JC Chandy Singh, if you're a charity, you're getting the same book that Georgetown is getting. And that's how we've bought. So textbooks, breakfast. We have provided more buses and boats in 4 years than the APNU did when they crushed and abolished the cash grant program to give buses and boats as they claim. So now, what's a fun fact that people don't realize? If you, as soon as you're born in Guyana, you get $100,000 on this new program that the government announced. When you're 3 years old, you begin to get $55,000, all the way up to 16, 17, 18, depending on when you leave school. And it's going to go up. I'm pretty sure it doesn't stop at $55,000. When you turn 18, you're getting a cash grant of $100,000. Every adult person who is 18 and of course registered and other done all the other eligibility things. So we are not only building roads and fancy buildings and bridges, we're looking to make sure that people come along this journey. President Ali has been very clear that he's going to incentivize um, studying and hard work. And so he's announced allowances for um, people who have masters and PhDs. And he has put made minimum for the army and the police minimum salaries that have never seen this kind of minimum before. We've raised the tax threshold, which means people get to keep more in their pockets. We've dropped the tax rate. I mean, it's a large number of things that have been done. And I wanted to touch on one more thing. We hear people saying things, people use these fancy words, oh, you now have fiscal space to do it. We do. But once we have fiscal space, people benefit. When the PPP came into office in 1992, when there was no fiscal space for anything, when 94 cents of every dollar was being used to pay debt, when people had white mouth, when people were malnourished, when we had the highest mortality, infant mortality, and maternal mortality rate, when things were rough. All of us know that rough period. Fetch water, blackout. It was horrible. What we met old age pensions being means tested. What that turned out to be is you had to have a PNC party card and you can get your old age pension. And many of even the PNC people who didn't find favor with their party didn't get that old age pension. The PPPC, with no oil, with all those other challenges, a high debt and all these other things, immediately said no. Once you're Guyanese, you're 65 years old and you're living in Guyana, everybody is going to get old age pension. So it's not oil. We didn't have oil then. What we had was the political will and the desire to make sure everybody gets a little bit of whatever the country has. When we came into office in 1992, we had 3 secondary schools in the hinterland. Northwest Secondary, St. Ignatius Secondary in Region 9, and Bartica Secondary, if you consider Bartica hinterland. I don't, because it's right there. But let's call it hinterland. With all of that, a terrible debt as a heavily indebted poor country without oil, from 92 to 2014, the PPP 2015, the PPP built 13 more schools in the hinterland. In the hinterland, Santa Rosa, Cato, Anai, Aishalton, Sand Creek, um, Warmadown, um, and of course I'm forgetting some now. But we built all these schools with no oil money because we knew that everybody must get a piece of the pie and the children of the hinterland are entitled to an education just like the children of Georgetown. The APNU came in with the best economic platform, save now, the best one at that time. And they didn't build a single secondary school in the hinterland, and they didn't build start and finish a single secondary school, not only in the hinterland but anywhere in Guyana. So it's not fiscal space alone. It is what you do with the money you have, how you see people, how you view people. Are they entitled to this? Are they deserving of these benefits? Should benefits be distributed equally and equitably? Those are the questions that people have to examine, and we believe that firmly in the People's Progressive Party. So, in this budget, people, these things are very sexy to say, oh, you're an oil country, you're making oil money, give everybody $1 million, raise everybody's salary, spend out all the money. But, those things have been studied in other countries where there were these kinds of resources, and that kind of expenditure was wild, was not prudent, and was very harmful for the people of those countries after it was applied in that manner. And so we're being very careful to make sure everybody benefits. Like I just told you, you're getting every child, everybody from birth almost to death is getting some kind of a grant or another, in addition to everything else that is happening. But it's just like your home. Let's say you were planting. We're not neglecting other sectors. So we're making sure the agricultural sector is strong, it's resilient, it can contribute. That mining is strong, resilient, and can contribute. That so what that means is people are getting to work in those fields, human beings. The farmer doesn't have to worry, well, here, these people wild, they're running after oil and gas. Rice is private business, so what happened to me now with my, when generations have invested in rice? Remember what happened? We said rice is private people, is a private business. The miner, the bauxite worker doesn't have to worry that, oh Lord, the PPP government just running after oil. So that means me and my family, we're in trouble because we're not in that sector. And we don't have to worry as a country that if oil prices reduce, that we'll be in trouble, or that we won't be able to sustain our expenditure or our investments in people. And I like to liken this to your home. If you're planting your garden, so you got your callaloo and you think you're growing chicken, you have your fruit trees, and you get a job in the bank, so you decide, okay, I'm just gonna use this salary, and I can stop growing my chicken, I can stop growing my vegetables, I'm just gonna use the salary. And then your job in the bank, something happens and you lose that, and you lose that, you have nothing to depend on. So the better thing to do is to be able to combine oil resources as well as our other revenue from other places, taxes, um, income from other sectors, to bring about the goodness Guyanese deserve and they say they want. And that's what we're doing here.
Minister, what I really wanted to zone in on is the infrastructure. I know in 2024 we closed off with doing more than 30 schools, as you'd mentioned, all across the country.
Began.
We began construction for 30 schools all across.
Secondary schools.
Secondary, and that's just secondary schools. We still have primary and nursery schools. And in budget 2025, I believe there is more than $36 billion allocated for infrastructural development under the education sector alone. What would this mean going forward for education delivery across the country?
So let me put it this way, Anara. Well, a lot of schools began, they're not finished. They're scheduled to finish at different points this year. Some may even roll into next year, depending on the size of the school and the contracts we sign and so on. But let's take Region 9 or Region 7 or Region 1. In Region 9, we had, when we came into office, there was St. Ignatius Secondary, Anai Secondary, Aishalton Secondary, and Sand Creek Secondary. We are currently built, so that's 4 secondary schools. Every child who was not in one of these secondary schools was in a primary top. So Mawara now, which is very deep south at the bottom of the map, their children couldn't go to different secondary schools. So what happened is they continued in the primary school, but they were getting some kind of secondary work by teachers who may not be trained to teach secondary work. Not the most optimal education. We are now putting down, so they had 4 schools for the whole of Region 9's existence. It has had 4 secondary schools. We are now building 7 more secondary schools in one 4-year term, well, one 5-year term. So the Irfan Ali term, the first Irfan Ali term, is going to produce 7 secondary schools, whereas for the entire of Region 9's existence, it had only 4, 3 of which came under the PPP. What that means, because we could talk about buildings and structures and the beauty of architecture, what that means is the children who before could not sit in a secondary school and benefit from a teacher who's trained at secondary and labs and um, CVQ and all the other things that would make them competitive, not only in Guyana but in the world, will now have spaces to sit in a secondary school, and spaces to be able to become competitive, to be all they can be, to be able to enter tertiary education, graduate with degrees and masters and PhDs, and then become whatever they want to be. Before now, we didn't have that. So that's the impact. And I want to be clear because sometimes we get lost in numbers and the buildings. And I see people saying, not unjustifiably, well, a building is not education. And I agree. A building alone is not education. But for sure, you got to give people a building to sit in before they can get education. But we're not doing buildings alone. As we're building, we're training teachers. We are providing support to parents. We are building out dormitories to a certain standard. We are building courts. So you see in Aishalton a basketball court. All the secondary schools are getting the same facilities. We're providing the textbooks. We're doing whatever is needed for those children to stay in their communities and be the best they can be. And so for me, it's one of the greatest undertakings we've had, not just because of a building, but what that building represents. It is hope for that community. It is hope for a child who before had to look on at pictures and magazines to see what secondary education looked like. They'll actually be able to sit in their village and do it. Take Region 8. Region 8, we had Madhya Secondary, Cato Secondary, and Paramakatoi Secondary. We're now building Monkey Mountain Secondary, Maikobi Secondary, Kopinang Secondary. So children before who couldn't go to any secondary school, who would have to look at a TV screen and say, wow, that's what secondary looks like. This is what other children are getting. Will now feel that in their village with their living close to their homes, with enjoying the nurture and love their parents and food their parents can give them. And then post secondary, be able to go to university, be able to join Goal, be able to do anything any child in Georgetown can do. Those are massive. If you sit in town in an office and you don't understand what's happening in regions, then you wouldn't have an appreciation for why those are big, massive investments in people, in the young people of this country. And so for me, I'm extremely humbled. I feel like we have to spend every waking minute, and that we have to make sure a lot of those minutes are actually waking minutes, running these projects down, because they mean so much. Every time we delay on a project, we delay the ability for children to benefit from it. And that's what I impress upon contractors. Some of them I take and I show them, this is where these children are sitting. Your school that you bid publicly and said you can build, this is the difference it will make in their lives. Just to try to inspire good quality, timely work from said contractors.
Okay, I want to take you back to training of teachers. You would have mentioned previously that we would have gone online and we've started graduating at least 2,000 per year. Previously, there was a limited number of hinterland teachers being given the opportunity to get trained. What does that look like now because of the investments we've made?
So that's an excellent question. So before now, so there are two programs. There's a trained teacher certificate program, and there's an associate degree program. The trained teacher certificate program takes 3 years. And if you're doing that, you're just a trained teacher, you don't have a degree. And then you have to go to UG for another 3 years to get a degree. So that's 6 years for and almost 100% of hinterland teachers before I came into office were accessing that program. So they took 6 years to get a degree. But many of them didn't, because you got to leave your house, leave your baby, leave your husband, leave your old aging mother who needs your help, leave your village and all the comforts thereof and the things you're accustomed to, and come to UG, rent an apartment, rent somewhere, live in a place that is strange, put up with all kinds of biases and bigotry, because that's what happens. And so a lot of the teachers didn't come out, didn't benefit from it. Once we introduced the associate degree program online, we see almost zero teachers doing the trained certificate program. So they always had the ability and the qualifications to do the degree program, but they never had access. So what we see now are teachers in the hinterland doing the associate degree program at CPC, and then going on to UG, because UG has also facilitated their education program online. So in 4 years, they're getting degrees. So two things are happening there. One, the teacher is improving himself or herself, and therefore his or her family and community. And two, the children who are in that teacher's classroom are benefiting from a higher quality and level of trained teacher. And that changed out what teacher training in the hinterland looked like qualitatively. Now let's talk numbers. Because we've gone online, before, if you have a school of 4 teachers, at any given point only one could come out and go to UG. Now everybody can go to UG at the same time. So what we have is a large number of teachers in the hinterland. So I saw an editorial, I think, in the Stabrook News today, that said, we're building schools, but we're not going to have teachers to put in the schools. And I mean, it's a fair observation, but it's an ignorant one, because we've been saying over and over again that we are training teachers in the hinterland, where they are, and we are seeing secondary, primary, nursery teachers get trained. So will we have a full complement of trained teachers, of 70 trained teachers in a secondary school in the hinterland immediately? Probably not, but we don't have that at Bishops. We don't have that at Roses. We're trying to get that done now. But to say that we're building and we're not looking at trained teachers, totally not does not reflect reality. The reality of what we're dealing with. So we are training teachers now, even as we build those schools. The second thing is we're training teachers in fields that we never trained in before. Health and family life education. So that's a teacher now trained to look for behaviors and teach behaviors in schools that we want to see reflected in our young people. We're training teachers, and we just had the first set of graduates for special education needs. Again, a first time program put at the Cyril Potter College of Education that will then be expanded at the University of Guyana. So there are different programs that we are putting in place, as well as the programs that exist. I had a meeting sometime early in the week. I get mixed up with days, but sometime early in the week, this last week on, I had a meeting with grade 6 teachers to say, we just had a mock exam. Are you looking at the results of that to inform what you have to do with your kids from now to the NGSA? And I saw people signing in from Conishan. Conishan is the last village in the country, the bottom of the map. I saw people signing in from Tusaning. I saw people signing in from uh, Matthews Ridge, from Region 1, from Region 7, from all over the country, teachers signing in. And the reason they're able to sign in is because these are the same teachers, or this is the same facility they're using to study online for the CPC and GOAL programs. So, I mean, we get to see that. And perhaps we don't talk about it enough because you're moving from thing to thing and we have so much to do. But I am seeing a different landscape for teacher training. We have challenges. We are dealing with many different people implementing our policies. And wherever you're doing that, where you have the good REO who followed our policy about what we want a teacher's house to look like, or teacher's accommodation to look like, you'll get it perfectly done there. Where you have an REO who didn't bother to read it, you'll have, challenges with that. We have to work on fixing those things. I'm not saying we're without challenges, but I'm saying that where we came from to now in a really, really short period is transformative. We're transforming how we deliver education, the places we deliver education in, the quality, the spread, the equity. And I'm very, very humbled by it. I'm very proud of it. And I also want to say, Anara, that you see me here, because that's the nature of the thing, but I have a really good team of education officers. I think we have the best collection now of education officers that I've ever seen. Now, let me be very, very clear. I've seen great, fantastic education officers in the past, even as I was growing up, because my mother was a teacher and I was exposed to that kind of thing. But I'm talking about the collection in the same place at the same time with the same passion, with the same forward drive, with the same understanding that this is possible. We can do it. We can change out how we make our children literate by grade 4. We can change out our mathematics results. We can change out how we train teachers and retrain teachers. I'm really supported by what I think is a great team, and I'm very, very pleased about that. I love them, and I'm very proud to be working alongside them, because I know in years to come our names won't be remembered, but or may not be remembered, but children's lives will change, and it will change in a way where we could now rely on them to look after this country, and that's our duty. That's what we're about.
Yeah. Minister, before we wrap up, do you have any last remarks about the budget and, going forward, what you would like to see?
The budget is a budget that is aimed at delivering our promises derived from people's expressions of what they want to see their country do. I don't think you could have had a better, more active, vibrant president leading his team. And by team, I mean not only cabinet members, but technical people. The pace at which the country has been growing, and you've been seeing development in your own communities, in your own village. I walked through Bellevue squatting area, and a couple of days ago, it's no longer a squatting area. It's been regularized. I was not walking on mud. I was walking on concrete roads. But it's still called Bellevue Squatting Area because it has been Bellevue Squatting Area for so many years. And that's a small, small microcosm of what's happening across the country. We're delivering, people are getting house lots and homes, young professionals. And once they get that, they now have an asset that they can get a loan from the bank to buy something else or to improve that same home. We now have families living with less people in the house, so you have less of the social issues you used to have: mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, and getting along, sexual abuse in homes that are crowded. Um, it's a lot of the spin-offs that we don't measure, that we don't count, that we can't count, are being delivered through this budget, and through the recurrent budgets of the People's Progressive Party Civic. And for 5 years, I mean, this is the fifth, it's been amazing what we've been able to do. And that has been recognized not only here, not only by residents and citizens, but also by different countries and different leaders. And that for me speaks. Now, do we have an opposition that's going to have something to say? I think oppositions can decide what they want to do. We were in opposition. We never once resisted any benefit for people. In fact, you said you're giving $5. We wanted 10. This opposition resists schools being built, hospitals being built, people going on the Gold Scholarship. I mean, they're on record. They call the Because We Care cash grant a foolish expenditure of money. It's a very strange opposition, but it's they get to decide what they want to be recorded as. History is going to record them as people who stood in the way of progress rather than found ways to demand more. I am not impressed. Frankly, we have to challenge ourselves to do better, because they're not posing the kind of competition you need, or people generally need to do well. So I think they are seen by the people of Guyana as being unable to manage and or run a country like ours versus the PPPC, who has delivered on all their promises, continue to do that in the face of COVID and floods and recessions across the country and different changes, recessions across the world, sorry, and different changes in the world. Um, People are seeing the different parties, and I'm glad about that. I'm glad we're living, although it could be a place that allows for a lot of libel and slander. I'm glad we're living in a very visible country where people are getting to see the different types of parties they have and the different choices they have. And people understand more than ever the power they hold in their vote. And they see a PPPC working for your vote, asking for it, but not only expecting it and feeling entitled to it, but working daily to win your heart, win your soul, win your mind, win your vote. Versus people who decided from the time they went in, we gonna rig this thing, so we gonna work for you. And that's the danger of rigged elections. If you know you're gonna rig elections, then you don't have to deliver on any promise. You don't have to deliver anything because you don't have to win anybody. You'll just steal their vote. And the Guyanese people are seeing that. So there's a very sharp contrast between the parties that are vying for people's attention and support. And I'm very pleased that I'm on the side of the People's Progressive Party, who's headed by an Irfan Ali presidency with a Bar Jagdeo as its general secretary. Very, very happy to be on that team.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Minister, and thank you for joining us today. This has been another edition of Budget in Focus 2025. Thank you for watching.